高提示，提升你的球技与品味。
Hi GolfTips followers, my name's James. I'm PGA professional working with 18 under in Shenzhen. Today I'm going to give you a few very simple tips on using the bounce in your wedges. This is fantastic if you struggle with bunker play, so not getting the ball out of the bunkers, and also if you tend to fat your wedges, or if you tend to hit the ground too much with your wedges. Using the bounce is key to getting the ball up into the air and not digging the floor too much. Every wedge will have bounce. Different levels of it, of course, with, for example, a sand wedge and a lob wedge and a gap wedge. They'll all have different levels of bounce. On the wedges, it will often say that. So, for example, with this Titleist Vokey wedge, for example, it's got the loft at 52 and then the bounce at 8 degrees. The bounce, in simple, is the ridge behind the leading edge of the golf club. So this is the leading edge. Here, this higher edge, this is the bounce. This is probably the most important part of the golf club. This is not just a thing that the pros use, and which is a very common thought with a lot of amateurs. It's important for the pros. Not at all, it's very important for everybody in every single shot you're going to use with the wedges. So the key to using this, all of it is to do with the setup and a little bit to do with the release, and we'll talk about that with you now. So the key to using the bounce of the wedge, very simply, is normally if you tend to fat the wedge or hit the ground too hard, it's because the handle is too far forward and the leading edge of the golf club will hit the ground first before the bounce. This will result in quite a heavy divot, and therefore sometimes if you do hit the ground before the ball, it will result in a much shorter shot, which for chipping is a disaster. So what we're going to work on today is trying to use this part of the club, the bounce and the trail edge, trying to get you that to help the ball get up into the air. A lot of this is done in the setup. So the key part to look for when you're setting up is to make sure that the leading edge is not digging into the floor too much. So you can see here, my leading edge is touching the floor, my hands are very far forward compared to where the ball is. This will basically allow the edge to hit the leading edge to hit the ground first and not use the bounce. What we're trying to do is hold the club a little bit further back. Again, not behind the ball, but just almost the handle almost in line with the ball, so that the leading edge of the club is not digging into the floor. When we're swinging through, the feeling we're trying to get is that the bounce of the club is hitting the mat every time, not the leading edge of the club. Okay, so we don't want the hands coming through too much. Okay, so with the practice I want you to do is let the club sit a little bit lower. So I'll do it from this angle to show you. Let the club sit a little bit lower. And what you'll notice then is the club face might slide a little bit open, but the leading edge will come off the floor. That's using more of the bounce. So here we're just going to show a little bit about the setup. Again, with my hands higher, you can see the front edge of my golf club is closer to the board. If I'd let the club drop lower, you can see the club head opens up, and now the leading edge of the club is not touching the floor anymore. This means that the bounce is coming more into play, which is perfect for helping me in the bunkers and also for my chipping to avoid me hitting it heavy. So what we're trying to do when we swing through is we're trying to make sure that that bounce is used, not the leading edge of the club. Okay, so in a shot, again, drop the handle a bit lower. If the club face opens, of course you can turn your aim accordingly to put the ball to go straight at your target. What we're going to try and do is drop the hands a bit lower, and then we're going to try and use that bounce when we hit the shot. Doing that will avoid any risk of any heavy shots. So in a bunker, for example, is a great habit to get into. Let the handle of the club sit a lot lower. Don't lift the club up high. Handle lower, it allows the bounce to work. Then that'll avoid any heavy shots. So again, I hope those very simple points in the setup help you with your wedge play and using the bounce of the club, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.